Prostko, and thank her for being willing to come here and be our guest reader for today. I was looking at this book, that Infinite Beginnings, that I probably exchanged this with you, probably. The date is was October 25th, 2014. We're reading in the Woodstock.
Right, so the last part of my book is focused on my life here, mostly. And it starts with a poem called Reflections that focuses on kind of a near-death experience I had when I was 1 year old. So I don't remember this, but the story was told to me over and over again by my mother especially. Apparently I almost drowned, and it was again my older brothers who were responsible. They were trying to take care of me, and of course they didn't notice when I slipped into the water. And they found me a while later, and of course they were very scared. But of course, the story has a happy ending. I'm still here. And as a result of this, I had kind of a mystical experience, I think. I don't remember, but I think I did. I split in 2 years ago. One part of me ran into the warm hug of death. One part of me stayed on the cold earth. When I look into the moon and blue pond and gold ponds in the middle of blue, I miss my other half. I can almost see her in the other world, rising from the bed of blue water to meet me with my own eyes. I can almost see her, but then she changes into a green snake, twists and slides through the waters of untamed life. Then I understand. I live to die, and she lives to be born. I always like to read this poem whenever my husband is in the audience. And when I teach creative writing to my students, we usually write odes. I love this idea of writing a poem of praise towards something that you admire, whether it's something ordinary or extraordinary. So this one is called Ode to Provider. Oh, provider of sweet cantaloupe sliced neatly onto my plate, pasta with mushrooms, basil, and real Parmesan, Snapples and Sobeys, I take to work in paper bags and sip slowly. Provider of thick blankets after the insomnia hours, of rare theories about nightmares, cats darting through the kitchen while taking our morning coffee. Provider of cosmopolitans, Miller martinis on the party nights. Provider of timelessness. In the hours of impatience, walking, grading papers and myself, running to catch the escaping subway. Provider of dreams, stretched on the widening moon, among the ticking of the clock. His name's Mirka, by the way. Okay. All right, so this one is called The Metaphor. With my eyes closed under an old quilt, I'm searching for the metaphor. I think of Virginia Woolf's diary and her description of the sun's eclipse. The withdrawal is so complete it makes us the raindrop that doesn't fall, scissors on the edge of an eye, we apprentices of dust, we divers in the air, we. And we thought now this is over. This is the shadow when suddenly the light went out. We had fallen, it was extinct. But maybe it's not exactly true. Not big like that. Just a white line on the blue mug. A crack noticed one day, bringing the tepid coffee to one's lips. Then, in a dream, I see the milky eyelid, a wrinkle widening on the face of the mountain. I keep bending like a heated rod, covering my head, though nothing really falls. I was, my husband and I were both in New York City during September 11th, So for us, this was, for everyone, this was obviously a very profound experience and a difficult experience to deal with. But there was something about the atmosphere of New York City just being permeated with what had happened. And so I wanted to write about it, and at the time I was at NYU taking workshops with some awesome poets like Phil Levine. And when I wrote this poem, it's called Meditation. It was pretty long, and it started with an airplane, and then progressing. I don't know, it had like 30 lines or something. And Phil looked at it and he said, "Okay, this is a pretty good poem," he says, "but you really need to cut it down." And he said, "Just get rid of the beginning altogether." And so it was cut down to half of it, basically. And I realized that he was right. So it's kind of nice when you have a teacher who will tell you how you need to revise your poem, and it sort of works. And when I was writing this, I thought of Whitman and Song of Myself. So some of you might recognize the quote there. After the second tower collapsed, the spirits scattered like dust onto windows and streets, into parks. Some of them settled on the curtain of the fog, some frosted grass, some wrinkled leaves. In my hair, on my lips, on the tip of my tongue, under the sole of my boot. They're everywhere now. Nothing is worth the trouble now, turning the key, dressing and undressing, setting the clock. So when you think, let's make love tonight, I say their lips could still be red, their hair curly and luscious, their thighs could be still bruised by the last touch. There could still be dreams knocking about their skulls, behind the eyes, sealed with blood. Okay, and so these are poems from my book, and I would like to read also a few poems that are more recent, that will probably become a part of my second manuscript, hopefully. It's kind of interesting because preparing for this event, I realized that I probably have enough poems to have my second book. I just never really put them together. And I thought, what? How did I not know this so far? So my husband is laughing because he kept telling me this, but it's okay. So this one is called In the Cellar, and it's based on a dream, and it's also based kind of on Plato's metaphor of the cave a little bit, and I'm just saying this for Paul's benefit. Anyway, the cellar is the underbelly of the house, and in its moist cavern, a toad sits on a secret pearl, glistening like an unshelled egg, almost transparent. I can make out random shapes as if in a kaleidoscope, but no visible principle. Under potatoes and soil, worms make their tortuous corridors and beckon children, afraid to misstep in the darkness. I descend toward the door. It opens, and in the light, strangely soft, almost opalescent, as if in the camera obscura, a single fly wavers between the tiny window and the stench of meat my mother has salted into metal cauldrons. There isn't enough room for me, but I am mesmerized by the light, the single ember ray falling across the heap of potatoes. The workers carry the new meat on their hands, skin, fat, bones. I stand in the circle of light, trace my life to its simplest form, witness the sacrifice. I bend my head toward the unknown, my only prayer. No one is there to comfort me. Silence simmers inside me. Globules of light trickle down my throat. And when I finally stumble upon a song, they burst like a newly blown glass, or like the most exquisite scream. So I do believe that poetry comes from deep, dark place, and it's that place is often the subconscious. And so many of my poems have been based on a dream that I had, or maybe there's an image that comes from a dream, and then the rest comes from reality, I guess the way I see it. And then there's some that come from, specifically from certain events that I experience. I had a fortunate situation of living on the lake and being able to see nature sort of passing right through my front porch, basically. And this poem, Grouse, is based on this experience. I was sitting on the porch one day and I saw grouse with small chicks. And the chicks were kind of flying up and down, up and down. I was so happy. So I wrote this poem that resisted happiness, of course, but has some happiness in it. For a woman will bear children in pain or under anesthesia. I must have known this for the past 30-something years. Must have been ready. In spite of Virginia Woolf's flight away from her womanly duties and into posterity. And so when I see a grouse, I'm hurriedly strutting across my flower bed like a super hen, with her fan-like crescent gleaming in the sunlight, her 5 chicks flying up and down around the bushes into the grass, but always behind her, I start having doubts. It might be a sign sent by my Bible-reading father, or Darwin, or my 5th grade teacher, who baked fragrant cookies in the apartment above a village schoolhouse and sang Russian lullabies to her children, along with her husband, who played a red accordion. Yes, it must be a sign. I see myself skimming the pages of my life story as the barren field, a mere stalk without a flower, wheat without an ear, shriveling deservedly. I who have suckled my mother's breast indifferently and then saw it cut off quietly without a fuss, as if it were a natural succession. Or maybe I will be fine, stealing a hopeful glance at my 2 spayed tabby cats curled up on the sofa. In the meantime, nowhere to run. Among predators and hunters, the grouse sways like a small boat in the grassland, beckons the little ones toward an invisible harbor. The tiny birds flicker on and off among the leaves, following the clucking. Oh, how they strive to be older. Those next 2 poems are very new. This one is called 2 Pomegranates. I've always been fascinated by pomegranates because they're so mythical. You keep thinking of Persephone and keep thinking of winter. And here I also thought of Frida Kahlo and her garden. So this is about a friend of mine. You say love, I say emptiness, slicing open the waxy globe of a pomegranate I bought today. Imagine lonely lamps on desks, the lake frowning its solitary forehead before the ice and wind, the tendrils of sentences pruned to sterile lucidity. A friend yesterday shattered my desk lamp in the shape of glowing Athena. She worried it meant something. But when does an object mean anything unless we imbue it with meaning? And so this pomegranate, I see trees frail in their nakedness, bending forward and shaking in quiet supplication of a faraway feast. I think of a shady river, a gypsy song haunting its shores, where something could be hidden, forgotten again. Drowsy and lost, I stumble into Frida Kahlo's garden to cut through the stillness, unveil its flesh-like insides, its ruby-eyed tomb, its manifold cravings and gifts, for Eros, for nothing, for all. So I'm the kind of person who worries about everything, who obsesses over small things. I don't know if you are one of these people. So I was trying to come up with something to cheer me up. So this is my effort at cheering myself up. It's called Case Against Worrying Too Much. Maybe on my deathbed, hopefully many years from now, all of my pink-hued embarrassments, intermittent stutterings in native and foreign tongues, prolonged awkward silences in front of large unsympathetic crowds, small and comical failings at making the right impression, momentary spineless hesitations and lapses of reason, as well as long-term effacements of the worst kind, will flash suddenly but briefly through my darkening consciousness, boisterous and free as meteors or baritone grunts of a bullfrog in June. Thus, all of my officious strivings, reduced to null, will send me deeper into unknown layers of the future, now almost former self, speeding my recovery from this hopeless love of life. And I have time for one more. So I would like to finish with a poem that I realized is sort of my ars poetica, a poem about making poetry. And it's basically just a description of looking at osprey flying over the lake and searching for a fish. And what I noticed is, we always talk about how eagles and ospreys, they can just do it in an instant. It's so easy, right? They just fall on the prey and this is it. Well, actually, if you watch osprey carefully, you will see that there are many moments when they come up catching nothing. And it's like a history of mistake after mistake after mistake. And then at some point, they got it. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This justifies all of my imperfections. So it's called Flight. Late at night, I summon the images of giant-headed marigolds and the morning sun illuminating the circular journey of osprey, stunned in his early flight, searching for what is given but unopened, unfurrowed surface of the lake. Waiting, sometimes he falls sharply and straight, but comes back with nothing, swaying slightly like an almost empty boat. Sometimes he falls sideways, but lucid and full of well-directed intent, the way some sentences spell open the caverns of truth or terrible sadness, reach suddenly into the recesses of the mouth, tasting the abundance of syllables, still perfectly round, but sometimes their course must be retraced over and over again. You waver like a fly on the edge of an empty plate, wandering aimlessly, as if nothing was to be gained by staying still. Think again of the flight's artistry, when it settles on its aim, when it saddles the wind and turns, readjusting its course, testing the flickering motion of ever thinner, silvery blue tail. Okay, thank you very much. So thank you for listening to all of this. I know this was a long time. I was told that this is followed by question-answer session, so I was wondering if there were any questions that you would like to ask. Yes?
How did you first get in?
Thank you for this question. So I was actually 8 when I wrote my first poem. And it was a poem about 2 cats. I had 2 kittens when I was growing up. And it was a terrible poem. But I was so proud of myself and nobody told me otherwise. So just because nobody discouraged me, I thought it was a big deal. And then when I was 16, I fell hopelessly in love. And it was truly hopeless because it was one of those relationships that was doomed from the start. But of course I didn't know it because I was 16. And so I remember this one night when I couldn't fall asleep, and I just started writing. And these weren't exactly love poems, they were kind of just poems about life. And the darkness that we all deal with sometimes. And kind of trying to find resilience from the creative space that we all have. And once I did that, I realized, hey, maybe this is something I could actually do. So I started talking to a friend who also wrote poetry. She was my age and she was in the same class. So we'd have long discussions about poets while drinking tea. This is Poland, Eastern Europe, okay. Give me a break, okay. But, and that's how it started really. And I started participating in competitions and people didn't hate my stuff. So I was like, wow, maybe I could do this. But this was when I was in Poland and I wrote in Polish. When I came to this country, I kind of lost my language. I felt like I lost my language. So it took me about 2 or 3 years before I started really writing again in English, actually. So I had a strange experience. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
A couple. I noticed you had to get a permission from Zaborska.
Yes.
Did you go to her house or something?
No. I wish this was the case. I did not know Zaborska. Neither did I ever see her read. She was very reclusive, in fact, so from what I know. But she was very kind. And the publisher told me that I have to request the permission. I thought, okay, this is going to be impossible. Who's going to,
Well, that's why I asked.
respond to me? But I sent an email to the publisher, and they spoke to Zaborska, and Zaborska was excited apparently. She's like, yeah, of course. So, who knew? I mean, apparently it's easier to get through to a famous poet than you think. I had kind of another weird experience when I was at NYU, and I was studying with Galway Canal, and Galway was working on a very long poem called When the Towers Fell. It was published in the New Yorker a year after September 11th. It was a beautiful poem, and he included actually some quotes from foreign poets such as Alexander Watt, who's a Polish poet who has gone through the experience of incarceration in Siberia and lost his health and just suffered terribly in his life. So Galway actually asked me to read the Polish part, and I was like, wow, here I am being asked by this famous poet to read the Polish part. And then not only that, but he called me like early in the morning, and he's like, oh, could you translate this this little passage for me, because I just received a fax from Czesław Miłosz, another very famous Polish poet, and I just want to make sure that what he chose is what I wanted him to choose for me. I was like, wow, all this exchange, back and forth between famous poets, and I'm just there kind of to witness that.
Do you do any translating of Polish poetry into English? Have you thought about it?
I have thought about it, and I worked on some translations of Leśmian. That were actually, a few of them were published by Barzak, which is a SUNY Albany translation magazine. That was at first advised by Pierre Joris, then it's student-led. So he's very interesting because he wrote in the period between the two wars. He was a Polish-Jewish poet who is very well known in Poland, but not very well known here. And part of the reason is the difficulty of his language. It's he uses neologisms, and he sort of believed in kind of Bergsonian theory of creation. He's very philosophical, so having regular rhythm and rhyme was very important for his poetry, actually. So I tried to do that. However, I just need more time to be able to work on this, actually. To be honest, I wanted to do this project for a long time. I know I'll return to it, but it's kind of a project that really requires some concentration. I'm very busy. Yes.
Do you ever write in Polish still?
Yes, I do write in Polish, and strangely enough, I write in Polish whenever I return to Poland. There's something for me about immersion in language that's very important. And the moment I go to Poland and I start talking to my family, to my friends in Polish, and I don't speak English really, I even make my husband speak Polish. This is when sort of my imagination again starts speaking to me in this language, and suddenly the lines just start coming. And there were times when I would be like on the plane from Warsaw to New York City, and that's when a poem in Polish would occur to me, and I would start writing it down. But other than that, I usually write in English here. It seems like somehow it just seems natural to do that. And I actually, these days, I'm very consoled by the presence